So an hour is always an hour, right? And a penny is always a penny.
You'd think so, yeah.
Right. We tend to think of time and money as these like absolute unchangeable laws of the universe
Right?
until, you look at the congressional record for a random Tuesday in July 2026 and you realize the federal government can literally just vote those concepts out of existence.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you actually read the transcripts.
It really is. So welcome to our deep dive on Congress and context. Today, we're unpacking a huge mountain of legislative actions, votes, and some really intense political dynamics from Tuesday, July 14th, 2026.
Exactly.
And the mission here is to take this massive stack of House and Senate transcripts and, just distill it into a clear narrative for you.
Yeah, and the sources from this specific Tuesday offer, honestly, a phenomenal snapshot of American democracy in action.
That's right.
I mean, we're looking at everything from the internal logistics of the federal footprint all the way up to highly charged partisan debates over law enforcement and then, these massive credible security bills.
The full spectrum.
Right. And because these sources contain the unedited transcripts from the House and Senate floors, they include some really intensely heated political rhetoric from both left-wing and right-wing perspectives.
Yeah, things got pretty fiery.
Very. And we just want to be clear up front, we are strictly reporting on the factual contents of this original source material, just to help you understand the mechanics of the day's congressional activity.
Right. We aren't taking sides or endorsing any of the viewpoints we discussed, just giving you the context you need to be informed.
Exactly. Just the facts.
So just a quick housekeeping note before we jump into the bills. Congress in Context is a completely independent project. We don't run ads, and we rely entirely on listeners like you to keep this civic education resource sustainable.
Which we really appreciate.
Yes, thank you. So if you find this breakdown helpful, you can support our production infrastructure by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee link, which is right there in your app's show notes.
Okay, so diving in.
Yeah, I think the most accessible way to understand Congress is to look at the laws that directly impact your daily life, right?
For sure.
And the House started this particular Tuesday with two things you interact with constantly. How you tell time and how you buy things. Let's look at the time first.
Right, so the House passed H.R. 139, which is the Sunshine Protection Act of 2025.
The time change bill.
Yeah, sponsored by Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida. And it basically aims to make daylight saving time permanent year-round. And it passed with a highly bipartisan vote of 308 to 117.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty solid majority.
Yeah, the mechanism here is straightforward but highly impactful. So instead of the current system where we, shift the clocks back in the fall and forward in the spring, this bill just locks the country into the summertime frame permanently.
Which means finally ending the biannual jet lag mandate.
Right. Exactly.
But the debate around this is fascinating because it wasn't just like a discussion about the annoyance of changing the microwave clock.
No, not at all.
The floor debate actually revealed a much deeper tension about legislative priorities. Like, Representative McGovern from Massachusetts took to the floor, and his argument was essentially about opportunity costs.
Yeah, he was pretty vocal about that.
He explicitly noted that while he actually supports making daylight saving time permanent, he questioned why the majority was dedicating floor time to this specific issue right now.
Right. His exact argument focused on the economic reality facing his constituents. He pointed out that Americans are being crushed by the cost of rent, groceries, utility bills, healthcare.
Stuff.
Exactly. So his pushback was to ask if, amidst all those heavy economic burdens, changing the clocks is truly the most pressing issue the House should be focused on.
Yeah.
It really highlights a common friction in Congress. Even when a bill has broad bipartisan agreement, like that 308 to 117 vote shows, the decision to prioritize it over, say, more contentious economic relief bills, well, that becomes a political flashpoint in itself.
That makes a lot of sense. And, that broad bipartisan agreement evaporated entirely on the very next bill.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, the House moved from the clock to the cash register, and the vote was incredibly tight and highly partisan.
Right. So this was H.R. 1181, the Protecting Privacy and Purchases Act. It passed 221 to 201.
Wow, super close.
Very close. And this bill is fundamentally about data architecture. It prohibits payment card networks, so the major credit card companies, from assigning specific merchant category codes, or MCCs, to firearms retailers.
Let's break down what an MCC actually is, because it sounds like, deep financial jargon.
Yeah, it does.
But basically, when you buy groceries, Your credit card company logs that transaction with a specific code denoting a supermarket. If you buy a plane ticket, it logs an airline code.
Right.
So this bill specifically blocks the financial industry from creating a unique identifier code just for gun stores.
Exactly. And the debate over this code perfectly encapsulates this modern collision between financial technology and constitutional rights.
How so? Well, Republicans framed the creation of this code as a backdoor to unconstitutional surveillance. Representative Fox from North Carolina argued aggressively that the federal government could use this data to track lawful purchases.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so she framed the bill as a necessary wall to protect Americans exercising their Second Amendment rights from intrusive federal monitoring.
But the Democrats argued the exact opposite side of that coin, right?
Yes, completely. Their stance was that blocking this code removes a critical public safety tool. They argued that law enforcement and financial institutions need these codes to flag suspicious purchasing patterns.
Like someone suddenly amassing massive amounts of weaponry and ammunition in a short period.
Exactly.
So how does Congress resolve a situation where the tool for financial privacy and the tool for public safety are literally the exact same thing?
Honestly,
Yeah.
they resolve it through sheer numbers. And the 221 to 201 vote shows just how narrowly divided the chamber is on this.
Just squeak by.
Yeah. The mechanism in question is just a string of numbers on a digital ledger. To one side, that string of numbers represents an early warning system that can prevent a tragedy.
And to the other.
To the other side, it represents an invasive tracking mechanism ripe for government abuse. Because the underlying technology is neutral. The legislative fight is entirely about intent and trust.
Right. Okay, so moving from digital credit card ledgers to the most physical form of money possible.
A penny.
The penny. Yeah, while guns and privacy deeply divided the House, both sides found total harmony when it came to the absolute smallest scale of the economy.
Yeah, H.R. 3074, the Common Sense Act. It's a highly bipartisan bill designed to stop the federal government from minting new pennies.
Common sense, I love the pun.
Right. And during the debate, Representatives McClain, Garcia, and Hill just laid out the raw math. It currently costs the government $85 million a year in losses just to keep minting pennies.
Because the metal costs more than the coin.
Exactly. The physical zinc and copper required to stamp a single penny costs significantly more than 1 cent. And the utility of the coin has been entirely erased by inflation.
Wait, hold on, though. Representative Garcia mentioned during this debate that there are well over 100 billion pennies currently floating around in jars, drawers, and cash registers across the country.
Yeah, a massive amount.
So if the government stops making them, what happens to those 100 billion existing coins? Are they suddenly worthless, or is this just going to create chaos at the cash register when people try to pay in exact change?
No, the coins remain legal tender. The bill provides a legal pathway and protection for businesses to implement something called cash rounding when exact change isn't available.
Cash rounding?
Yeah, this is the crucial mechanism. So if your total at a hardware store is, say, $1.02 and you pay in cash, the total rounds down to $1.
Okay.
If the total is $1.03, it rounds up to $1.05.
But what about digital?
Digital transactions, like credit cards, would still process to the exact cent. This legislation just acknowledges that the physical penny has lost its function as a medium of exchange.
Right.
And it provides the corporate accounting and retail logistics framework to phase it out without declaring the existing 100 billion coins invalid.
Got it. So it's a practical phase out. And if we zoom out from the penny to the macro level banking sector, we actually see another moment of total harmony.
We do. The Failing Bank Acquisition Fairness Act, H.R. 6556. It passed unanimously out of committee.
Unanimously?
Yeah, which is rare. This legislation addresses a very specific vulnerability in bank mergers. Under normal circumstances, the banking sector operates with strict deposit concentration limits.
Meaning a single bank can't hold too much of the pie.
Exactly. A single bank cannot hold more than a certain percentage of the nation's total deposits. This is a deliberate guardrail designed to prevent monopolies and mitigate the whole too-big-to-fail systemic risk.
But when a massive bank suddenly collapses, the government usually scrambles to find a healthy bank to buy up the failed bank's assets over a single weekend.
Right.
Right. Just to prevent a panic.
Right. And this bill tightens the rules around those exact emergency acquisitions. It prevents federal agencies from granting exceptions to those anti-monopoly concentration limits during a bank failure.
Unless there's an exception, right?
Yes, unless the agency determines that making the exception is absolutely necessary to prevent significant economic disruption or a broader contagion in the financial system.
Okay, so it stops massive, already dominant banks from using emergency weekend fire sales to quietly gobble up more market share.
Exactly. It effectively forces regulators to look for smaller or regional buyers first.
Okay, so we have total legislative harmony on the penny and on preventing banking monopolies. But that pragmatic committee-level agreement vanished entirely during the House's open debate periods.
Oh, completely.
The contrast is staggering.
Yet during morning hour debate and one-minute speeches, the underlying political dynamics of 2026 really took over. The rhetoric on the floor was intensely heated.
Like what?
Well, Representative Fox claimed the Democratic Party is being taken over by communists, and she dismissed their floor arguments as rhetorical smog.
Wow. And Representative McGovern fired back with equal intensity, right?
He did?
He accused Republicans of holding the House floor hostage for weeks over what he called a Republican family feud. He specifically pointed to a bipartisan housing bill, accusing the majority of using it as leverage for election lies.
Yeah, he even noted that President Trump previously let a housing bill become law without his signature simply because he was angry the Senate hadn't passed a voting bill.
But amidst this highly charged partisan theater, several representatives used their time to highlight some severe domestic crises. Like Representative Miller Meeks from Iowa brought the focus to housing.
Right. The statistics she cited point to a massive structural deficit. The nation is short as many as 5.5 million homes.
5.5 million.
Yeah, and the average first-time home buyer is now 40 years old, which is an all-time high.
That's incredible. And while she focused on housing, Representative Costa from California directed his frustration at cuts to the social safety net.
Yeah, he criticized Republicans for cutting SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, twice.
Right.
He argued that the drops in program enrollment weren't a sign of economic recovery, but rather people losing entitled benefits. And he delivered a very sharp rebuke, stating that fraud is a crime, but hunger is not.
That's a strong line. And then the floor debate shifted to law enforcement and oversight, right? Specifically regarding ICE immigration and customs enforcement.
Yes. Representatives Gomez, Stansbury, and Guest delivered really intense speeches regarding recent fatal shootings by ICE agents in Texas and Maine. The sources specifically highlight the death of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo.
And the detail that stands out here is the gap between Congress writing a check and an agency actually executing the mandate.
Huge gap, yeah.
Because Congress had previously appropriated tens of millions of dollars specifically for body cameras for these ICE agents, but during these fatal shootings, the agents reportedly were not wearing them.
Right. And Representative Guest was furious on the floor. He demanded accountability and stated he would refuse to vote to fund what he called a lawless, reckless agency until justice was served.
It's like watching a split-screen movie where the actors are in two completely different realities. How does this level of rhetoric actually translate into the legislative process?
Well, it's a textbook example of the limits of congressional power. Congress has the power of the purse. They can mandate body cameras and fund the technology.
Right.
But if the executive branch agency fails to deploy the equipment operationally, the legislative branch is left with only blunt instruments for accountability.
Like threatening to withhold future funding entirely, which Representative Guest is doing here.
Exactly. And that ideological friction freezing the House floor isn't just a lower chamber problem. Over in the Senate, that exact inability to compromise just derailed what is normally the most untouchable legislation of the year.
The defense budget.
Yes. The Senate was attempting to move forward on S-4784, the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, for fiscal year 2027.
And the NDAA is traditionally considered must-pass legislation, right? Because it authorizes the funding structure for the entire United States military.
Exactly. And to move the bill forward for a final vote, the Senate needed to invoke cloture, which requires a 60-vote supermajority to end debate.
And it failed.
Yeah, the motion failed on a vote of 50 to 46.
Wait, if the defense bill is must-pass, what does a failed 50-46 vote actually signal? Are they going to defund the military, or is this just procedural leverage?
It's procedural leverage. Senate Majority Leader Thune immediately entered a motion to reconsider.
What does that do?
That's a specific parliamentary maneuver that allows him to bring the exact same vote up again later. A failed cloture vote on the NDAA usually means leadership needs to buy time to hash out disagreements behind closed doors.
Ah, okay.
And when you look at the sheer scope and complexity of the amendments attached to this year's bill, the friction makes total sense.
I mean, the amendments attached to this defense bill read like the plot of a near-future sci-fi novel.
They really do.
You have the Orbital Sustainability Act, or Orbits Act, This amendment forces the government to tackle the logistics of space debris in low Earth orbit.
Right, treating orbital clutter as a direct threat to national security satellites.
And then there's the BLADE Act, which stands for Blocking Large-Scale Adversarial Distillation Efforts.
Yeah, this one is huge. It's designed to protect advanced, closed-source artificial intelligence models owned by U.S. companies from foreign adversaries.
Okay, wait. By attaching this to the NDAA, the Senate is fundamentally reclassifying commercial algorithms.
Exactly. They are no longer treating advanced AI simply as corporate intellectual property. They're treating it as a literal national defense asset that requires military-grade protection against foreign data extraction.
That is a massive shift. They also attach the Mind in America Act, which formally recognizes blockchain and digital assets as essential to U.S. strategic interests.
Right.
And then there are heavy, detailed sanctions targeting the Russian shadow fleet and the sabotage of subsea fiber optic cables.
Yeah, the Russian Shadow Fleet Amendment reveals the mechanics of modern economic warfare. It targets foreign vessels that deliberately turn off their automatic identification systems, their tracking beacons.
To smuggle oil, right?
Exactly. These ships engage in unsafe ship-to-ship transfers in open water to smuggle Russian petroleum, completely bypassing international sanctions.
Wow.
So by targeting the maritime insurance policies and the tracking data, the Senate is acknowledging that modern warfare is no longer just about tanks and aircraft. It's fought through algorithms, satellite orbits, subsea fiber optics, and the obscure logistics of maritime shipping.
That's fascinating. But amidst all these futuristic security debates, the Senate actually paused the procedural maneuvering for a moment of rare institutional unity.
Yeah, they did. To remember the late Senator Lindsey Graham.
Right. Senators from both sides of the aisle shared very personal stories, like Senator Cotton recounted traveling with Graham to the Munich Security Conference.
And the chamber learned his childhood nickname was Stinkball.
Spinkball.
Yeah, a nod to his irrepressible rascal nature growing up in the back of his parents' pool hall in South Carolina.
What really stood out in the tributes, though, was the focus on his specific legislative mechanics, particularly his ability to forge massive compromises. Senators Tillis and Cornyn specifically highlighted his vital role in passing the bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
Right. They pointed out that despite intense political pressure and rampant misinformation regarding the bill, including false claims that it was a red flag confiscation law, which Senator Tillis strongly refuted on the floor, Graham managed to help navigate that major mental health and gun safety legislation from concept to implementation in just 6 weeks.
6 weeks is incredibly fast for Congress.
It really is. And he did it by working closely alongside conservative Republicans like Cornyn and Tillis and Democrats like Chris Murphy and Kyrsten Sinema.
It serves as a reminder that behind the intense partisan posturing, deep human relationships still drive the actual machinery of compromise in Washington.
Very true.
So shifting from the massive global defense budgets and legacy legislation, we find Congress also managing the much quieter internal mechanics of the government. The actual physical footprint of the bureaucracy is changing.
Right. The House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure passed a resolution authorizing $215.5 million to physically relocate the Department of Energy headquarters.
Okay.
But this move is just one piece of a much broader initiative. It falls under a $364.7 million optimization program for fiscal year 2026 managed by the General Services Administration, or GSA.
So the GSA is essentially Marie Kondoing the federal government.
Basically, yeah.
They're looking at this massive portfolio of federal real estate and deciding what actually sparks joy, or more accurately, what provides a return on investment for the taxpayer.
Right. The optimization program reflects a permanent shift in how the government operates post-pandemic. Remote and hybrid work have fundamentally changed how much physical office space the massive federal workforce actually requires.
Makes sense.
So the GSA is systematically evaluating work environments to dispose of unneeded federally owned assets, release leased space, and consolidate agencies to improve energy and water efficiency.
So if a lease doesn't serve a strategic mission, Congress is defunding it.
Exactly.
Speaking of long-term financial viability, we can't ignore the ultimate long-term liability, which is Social Security.
Right. In the Senate, Senator Durbin introduced S-4979, the Promise Act. And this bill takes a fascinating procedural approach to the looming Social Security crisis.
How so?
Well, it notes that the program is projected to hit a wall and face insolvency by the end of 2032. So rather than proposing one specific tax hike or benefit cut, This bill creates a procedural kill switch.
Wait, a procedural kill switch? How does that actually force the Senate to solve the problem?
Normally, a senator can introduce a tiny Band-Aid fix that pushes an insolvency date back by just a few years to get past the next election cycle.
Right.
Durbin's bill mandates that any proposed substitute amendment to the legislation must be explicitly certified by the chief actuary to guarantee 50 years of solvency for the Social Security Trust Fund.
Wow, 50 years.
Yeah. If a senator brings an amendment to the floor and the underlying math doesn't mathematically prove half a century of solvency, the Senate rules won't even let the amendment proceed for debate.
So it's an attempt to force regular order and demand permanent mathematical solutions on a topic that most politicians prefer to avoid. Man, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. I mean, from the mechanics of daylight saving time and credit card codes to the logistics of phasing out the penny, heated floor battles over ICE, the procedural hurdles of the defense budget, and the physical footprint of the government.
It's been a busy day on the Hill.
So what should we be watching next?
Well, watch the Senate to see if Majority Leader Thune can muster the 60 votes necessary to invoke cloture and move the NDAA defense bill forward.
Right. We'll see if they can break the stall.
Exactly. Pay attention to what specific compromises have to be made on those advanced AI and maritime security amendments to secure those votes. We'll also see how the implementation of permanent daylight saving time unfolds if the Senate decides to take up the House's bill.
Which would be huge.
Yeah. And finally, watch how the retail economy adapts to the logistical reality of cash rounding as the penny is slowly phased out of circulation.
There is an incredible amount to keep an eye on. We want to sincerely thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the congressional record. Navigating this much dense information isn't easy, but understanding the mechanics of these laws is crucial.
Absolutely. And, if you want to participate in democracy beyond just casting a ballot every few years, tracking upcoming committee markups is a highly effective way to start.
Good point.
You can read the exact text of bills like the Sunshine Protection Act or the Promise Act on congress.gov. We encourage you to contact your representatives about the specific issues and votes we discussed today.
Yeah, get involved. And one final reminder, we are entirely listener-supported. If you value this ad-free, balanced civic education, please take a second to hit that Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. It genuinely provides the infrastructure to keep this production running.
Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied. Thank you for taking the time to understand the workings of your government today.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Today we talked about the physical penny officially being legislated out of existence because the logistics of minting it just don't make economic sense anymore.
Right.
It makes you wonder what other everyday tangible aspect of American life is quietly becoming obsolete right now, just fading into the background, while Congress focuses all its loud energy on the grander political battles. Something to think about. Until next time.